The galaxy had grown silent with fear. Star systems that once sang with life and trade were now quiet, abandoned, or burning. Worlds fell under the shadow of a single name, the Dominion Armada. They were not just soldiers. They were a storm of metal and fire, a living nightmare that no one dared challenge. Every fleet that rose to fight them vanished like sparks in a hurricane. Every system that tried to resist was crushed. In the northern rim of the Vayari sector, their fleets had once been proud. Their ships glimmered with advanced technology, and their captains were known as masters of strategy. But when the Dominion arrived, pride meant nothing. Within days, their fleet was destroyed, scattered into debris fields that glowed like dying stars. The survivors escaped with empty hands and hollow hearts, spreading the terrifying news across the galaxy. The Carthon Empire had thought itself untouchable. They had the largest armada in the sector and the fiercest warriors. They believed experience and strength could shield them from any threat. But the Dominion did not negotiate. Their attacks were swift, calculated, and utterly merciless. The Carthon ships that survived even one engagement returned as burnt-out husks. Commanders who had survived hundreds of battles were either dead or prisoners of a force they could not understand. Everywhere, it was the same story. The proud Hryn, whose fleets had never surrendered in 1,000 years of history, were forced into silence. The Lithari, the Mirans, the Denari, all who attempted resistance met the same fate. Their fleets, their warriors, their strategies, it all crumbled. It was as if the Dominion did not just fight, it erased. The Galactic Council tried. Councils always try. Representatives of every species gathered to find a solution. Fleet after fleet was formed, weapons more powerful than ever before were deployed, and plans more intricate than any star map were drawn. They believed in strategy, in numbers, in technology. But each time, the outcome was the same. Each alliance, no matter how brilliant or vast, was broken like glass under the Dominion's relentless advance. Galactic history had never known such despair. A cold silence fell over the communications networks. Systems went dark. Messages of help arrived too late, if at all. Entire sectors were reduced to debris and fire. And somewhere, in every survivor's mind, a single question echoed louder than any starship cannon. Who can stop them? It was in this darkest hour that a new signal appeared at the edge of Dominion-controlled space. A small blip on the scanners, barely visible, hardly significant. The Galactic Council almost ignored it. Their sensors were flooded with hundreds of signals from lost fleets and decimated planets. They had learned not to hope. But something about this one was different. The signal was human. A single ship, far from any stronghold, unarmed compared to the giants of the galaxy. A Terran heavy frigate called the Aegis, old and scarred, a relic from conflicts long past. Its hull bore the scratches of minor skirmishes. Its engines were patched and rebuilt more times than anyone could count, and its weapons were modest. Nothing, compared to the massive dreadnoughts it would soon face. The Dominion's scouts saw it and laughed. A single human ship? Ridiculous. Not worth their time. They had crushed fleets 10 times its size. They had destroyed civilizations. What could this tiny vessel do? But humans, it seemed, were not meant to be understood. For some reason, when the galaxy counted them out, when every other species had bowed to fear, humans fought. They fought with determination, with stubbornness, and with a strange, unbreakable hope that others could not explain. Captain Elias, Rourke of the Aegis, knew the odds. He knew the Dominion would destroy him if they noticed. He knew that no fleet was coming to help, and that his ship was too small to matter. Yet he did not hesitate. His crew, 90 humans, were ready not because they expected victory, but because they refused to watch the innocent die without trying. Somewhere in the shadows of the cosmos, a tiny spark of hope had appeared. The galaxy didn't know it yet, but the first human ship was moving forward, and history was about to remember the courage of one vessel that dared to stand when everyone else had fallen. The Aegis drifted through the blackness of space, a small speck among the glittering stars, yet carrying the weight of hope for countless souls. Captain Elias Rourke stood on the bridge, eyes fixed on the display, watching the ghostly blue dots of refugee convoys scattered across the sector. These were worlds abandoned by the Galactic Council, people who had nowhere to hide, no fleet. To defend them, no hope, except what this fragile human ship could offer. The Aegis was old. Its hull had scars from battles that no one alive now remembered. The engines hissed and sputtered, patched with makeshift repairs from clever human hands. Its weapons were outdated by galactic standards. The shields flickered in weak pulses. Any other species would have called it a relic, unfit for combat. But humans had a way of making the impossible possible. Where machines failed, they invented. Where systems broke, they adapted. Where death seemed certain, they fought. On the bridge, every crew member was focused. Gunner Lara Tay leaned over the targeting console, fingers dancing across worn controls. Her eyes were sharp, her movements precise despite the fatigue that clawed at her muscles. She had lost count of the hours since leaving human space, and yet she did not stop. She could see the Dominion fleet in the distance, a black wave of destroyers and cruisers moving like a storm toward the helpless convoys. "Are we really going to face them?" whispered Ensign Jalen, a young communications officer barely out of training. His voice trembled with fear. Captain Rourke's gaze softened, but he remained steady. "We don't have a choice," he said. "If we don't, thousands will die. If we do, maybe we can save a few, and that's all that matters." The young officer swallowed hard, realizing that humans had a courage he could barely understand. It wasn't blind bravery, it wasn't arrogance, it was stubbornness, an unwillingness to turn away when others suffered, even when the odds were impossible. The Dominion scouts detected the Aegis almost immediately. Sensors pinged, and reports flew across the bridge. The fleet commander's voice, cold and mechanical over intercepted transmissions, was filled with contempt. "A single human frigate? Prepare to vaporize it. Nothing alive should be so foolish." Lara Tay's fingers did not falter. "Let them come," she muttered. "We'll make them regret underestimating us." The Aegis's engines roared as it accelerated toward the convoy. Small but agile, it darted between asteroid belts and radiation storms, using every trick humans had invented to survive in space. The Dominion fleet laughed at first. A single ship? They thought it was a distraction, a bug in the radar. They did not notice the clever maneuvers, the evasive turns, the way the Aegis used the environment to mask its movements. Inside the ship, every human was aware of the impossible task ahead. Engineers worked in shifts to keep the engines running, at dangerous levels. Medics patched minor injuries from stress and fatigue before they became serious. Even the youngest crew members pulled double duty, carrying supplies, loading weapons, monitoring sensors, and offering support wherever they could. There was no room for despair, no time for doubt. Captain Rourke walked through the ship, speaking to his crew, offering reassurance and sharing quiet moments of courage. "We are small," he said, "but we are human. That is more than enough. They can break fleets, they can crush civilizations, but they cannot break the human will." His words spread like fire through the Aegis. Fear did not vanish, but it transformed into focus. Every crew member understood that they were not just fighting for themselves. They were fighting for worlds, for families, for hope itself. In the distance, the first Dominion ships appeared on the horizon, massive and terrifying. The human ship seemed to shrink in comparison, fragile as a paper boat in a stormy ocean. And yet, inside that small ship, a spark burned. A spark of defiance that would not die. The galaxy had counted humans out. It had assumed they would flee, surrender, or be crushed. But humans did not surrender. Humans did not flee. They faced the impossible, stared into the storm and held their ground. And the Aegis, small, battered, and alone, moved forward to meet the Dominion Armada, carrying not just its crew, but the hope of 1,000 worlds. The Aegis approached the outer rim of the refugee convoy, a thin line of ships carrying civilians, families, and the last remnants of entire civilizations. Every ship in the convoy was slow, overloaded, and defenseless. The humans aboard the Aegis could see the fear on the screens, could sense the panic in the voices over the comms. And beyond the convoy, the Dominion Armada waited, a black storm of destroyers, cruisers, and battleships, ready to annihilate everything in sight. Captain Elias Rourke stood at the bridge, fists clenched around the railing. He knew the truth. He knew the numbers. He knew the Aegis had no chance to survive. 100 Dominion warships against one small human frigate was not a battle. It was a funeral. Yet he gave the order without hesitation. Raise shields. Arm every weapon. And get ready to fight like this is the last day of the universe, Rourke said. His voice was calm, steady, but inside his heart hammered like a drum. The crew did not flinch. They had heard this before in training simulations. But nothing could compare to the real moment. The moment when thousands of innocent lives depended on 90 humans and one fragile ship. The first wave of Dominion ships moved in. Massive cannons glowed, their energy blasts streaking toward the convoy like lightning. The Aegis maneuvered with impossible speed, weaving between debris fields and asteroid belts, firing every missile it had, every turret blazing. Each shot was precise, each movement calculated, but the numbers were overwhelming. Explosions rocked the void. One by one, refugee ships fell, torn apart by Dominion fire. The Aegis blasted away what it could, but there were too many attackers. The humans had to make choices: who to save, what to defend, what to sacrifice. Every choice weighed heavily on them. Every life mattered. Lara Tay, the lead gunner, gritted her teeth as she targeted another destroyer. "Come on, you monsters," she muttered. "Try to break us, I dare you." Her fingers danced across the controls, firing salvo after salvo. Every shot that hit was a victory. Every miss a reminder of how fragile their position was. In the engineering bay, Chief Engineer Marcus Holt was screaming orders. The engines were pushed beyond safe limits, heat warning lights flashing nonstop. Hull breaches threatened to tear the ship apart, and yet Marcus patched, rerouted power, and kept the Aegis moving. "If this ship dies, we die," he shouted to his team. They worked without rest, without hesitation, fueled by adrenaline and a stubborn refusal to give up. Meanwhile, Captain Rourke watched the unfolding chaos from the bridge. His eyes scanned the battlefield, calculating, predicting, hoping. He gave orders, adjusted tactics, and risked everything to shield the convoy. Every human on board could feel the weight of the galaxy pressing down on them, yet none of them faltered. Fear was there, yes, but it was transformed into focus, determination, and unyielding courage. The Dominion commander observed the small human ship and finally realized something unexpected. This vessel, this single insignificant human frigate, was fighting with a ferocity he had never seen. Every maneuver was smart, every attack relentless, and the humans aboard refused to surrender. His voice over the comms was sharp, frustrated. "Destroy it. Do not let it interfere." But the humans were already beyond fear. They had accepted the impossible. They had accepted that death might come, and yet they refused to give up hope for the others. Every cannon blast, every evasive maneuver, every desperate action was a statement. You cannot break the human will. For hours, the battle raged. The Aegis was small, battered, and exhausted, yet it protected the convoy inch by inch. The Dominion fleet, confident and merciless, began to realize they were not dealing with ordinary creatures. The humans fought not for glory, not for honor, not for conquest, but for life itself. And in that moment, the galaxy began to remember an old truth. Courage is not measured by numbers. Power is not measured by weapons. And hope, when wielded by humans, can shine brighter than the stars themselves. The Dominion fleet had never encountered resistance like this. A single human ship, small and battered, danced through their formation with impossible precision. Energy blasts streaked past, missing by mere meters as the Aegis darted between debris and asteroid fragments. Its weapons fired relentlessly, each shot striking with uncanny accuracy. For the first time, the Dominion felt frustration. For the first time, their confidence wavered. On the bridge of the Aegis, the humans moved as one. Gunner Lara Taze. Hands flew across the controls, firing torpedoes, lasers, and missile salvos. Her eyes burned with determination, her voice a steady whisper over the comms. "Come on, hit them! Hit them all!" She did not speak to the fleet. She spoke to herself, to the ship, to every human heart that refused to surrender. In the engineering bay, Chief Marcus Holt was working feverishly, rerouting power, patching hull breaches, and keeping engines from exploding under the strain. Sparks flew as his team welded broken conduits, patched torn armor, and rerouted energy to weapon systems. "Keep it moving. Don't let it die," Marcus shouted, sweat and grime streaking his face. Every human on board understood the stakes. Every life mattered. Every second of survival meant someone else lived. The Dominion realized they were not dealing with ordinary opponents. Ships that once crumbled before their cannons now dodged with uncanny speed. Their fleets were being shredded by a single frigate. For the first time, a crack appeared in their perfect formation. Destroyers exploded in fireballs, cruisers twisted in damaged spirals, and even the larger battleships had to divert to avoid collisions caused by their own evasive maneuvers. Captain Elias Rourke stood tall on the bridge, eyes scanning the battlefield. Calm in voice but intense in thought, he gave command after command. "Target their lead destroyers, cover the convoy, keep moving." Every order was precise, calculated, and urgent. He felt the weight of thousands of lives on his shoulders, yet he did not falter. In every decision, every maneuver, every shot fired, he carried the hope of entire worlds. The humans were small, fragile, and outnumbered, yet they were relentless. Ensign Jalen, the communications officer, relayed orders to automated turrets and weapon systems, coordinating strikes with a precision that belied his young age. "We can do this," he muttered under his breath, watching explosions tear through Dominion hulls. "We can do this, like we have to." The battle raged for hours. The Aegis sustained damage after damage, yet each time it seemed on the verge of destruction, the humans inside patched it together, pushed their limits, and pressed on. The Dominion fleet had expected an easy victory, a minor inconvenience, and instead they faced a storm they could not predict or understand. The morale of the human crew remained unbroken. Even as explosions shook the ship, even as alarms screamed of critical failures, they continued to fight. Fear existed, yes, but it was transformed into action, into courage, into determination. They had no choice but to fight. And they fought, with everything they had. And slowly the tide began to turn. Destroyers were reduced to burning wrecks. Cruiser after cruiser fell into chaos. The Aegis had done what no one thought possible. It had become a symbol of resistance, a spark in the darkness. The Dominion fleet faltered, confused and furious. They had broken countless fleets, conquered countless worlds, but never had they faced one ship that could fight back so relentlessly. Captain Rourke looked at the stars outside, the void filled with fire and destruction, and a strange calm settled over him. The humans were alive, the convoy was moving, and hope, fragile but real, still existed. He knew the fight was far from over. The Dominion would not yield. But for the first time in years, the galaxy saw a glimmer of possibility. The Aegis had shown that one small ship, one determined crew, could strike fear into the hearts of an empire. They had shown that courage, cunning, and sheer will could stand against impossible odds. And in that fire and darkness the humans vowed they would not stop, they would not give up. Not now. Not ever. The battle raged on, relentless and merciless. The Aegis, battered and scarred, weaved through the Dominion fleet like a single thread in a storm of steel. Explosions lit the void in fiery blooms, scattering debris across the battlefield. The humans aboard the fragile ship moved with a precision and determination that no machine, no fleet, no empire could predict. Each crew member had a role, each action a purpose. Gunner Lara Tay's fingers moved faster than the eye could follow, guiding torpedoes through narrow gaps in enemy formations. Her eyes burned with a fierce intensity, reflecting the flames of ships exploding around them. "Keep firing, don't stop," she shouted, though there was no time for pause. Every moment counted. Every ship they destroyed saved another life. In the convoy, in the engineering bay, Chief Engineer Marcus Holt barked orders while sweat ran down his face. Sparks flew, alarms screamed, and the heat of overloaded engines filled the room. Crew members scrambled, patching hull breaches, rerouting power, and improvising repairs with every ounce of skill they had. "We're not dying today," Marcus yelled. "We're not giving them the satisfaction." The words echoed through the ship, a lifeline of courage in the chaos. Below deck, medics worked tirelessly. Bandages, stimulants, and emergency patches were applied to wounded crew members. As others jumped back into action, young cadets carried supplies, loading weapons, monitoring systems, and offering encouragement wherever they could. Every human on board knew the stakes. If the Aegis fell, the convoy fell, and countless innocents would die. Yet none of them faltered. None of them complained. They only worked harder, faster, smarter. Captain Elias Rourke stood on the bridge, calm but alert. His eyes scanned the battlefield, reading the movements of the Dominion fleet, anticipating every attack, calculating every risk. He gave precise orders, moving the Aegis like a conductor leading a symphony of destruction. "Cover the convoy's left flank," he shouted. "Target the destroyers. Focus fire on their weapon systems." His voice carried authority, but also something deeper, unwavering faith in his crew. The Dominion fleet was growing frustrated. Their ships, massive and terrifying, were being destroyed one by the single human frigate. They had expected surrender, or at least fear. Instead, they faced relentless resistance. Hulls burned, shields collapsed, and systems failed under the barrage of calculated human attacks. The fleet commander realized with growing disbelief that they were dealing with something entirely unexpected, a species that refused to yield, even when death was certain. Hours passed. The Aegis was battered, systems failing, weapons overheating. Yet it continued to fight. The humans inside had pushed past exhaustion, fear, and pain. Their bodies screamed for rest, but their minds and hearts refused to stop. Captain Rourke moved among them, encouraging, guiding, inspiring. "Every life we save matters. Every ship we protect is worth more than any of us." Then a new wave of Dominion ships arrived, larger, deadlier, and angrier than before. They fired volleys that could have destroyed entire planets, yet the humans did not retreat. They adapted, dodged, and struck back with precision and courage that defied reason. The Aegis became a whirlwind of motion, light and fire, a single vessel standing against an empire. The convoy moved steadily forward, protected by this fragile, relentless ship. The humans aboard knew the cost of failure, yet they carried on. They fought not for glory, not for victory, but for the innocent lives that depended on them. Every decision, every maneuver, every desperate action was an act of defiance, a statement. You cannot break the human spirit. As the battle continued, a new truth began to emerge across the galaxy. Courage is not measured by numbers. Power is not measured by weapons. And when humans stand together, even the smallest ship can strike fear into the hearts of the strongest enemy. The Aegis had become more than a ship. It had become a symbol, a promise, a spark that refused to die. And the Dominion Armada was learning, too late, that one human ship could stand against all odds, and perhaps even change the course of history. The void of space burned with fire and destruction. The Aegis, battered, smoking, and scarred, moved, with desperate speed, weaving through a sea of Dominion warships. Each explosion shook the small ship, yet the humans inside refused to yield. Captain Elias Rourke stood on the bridge, his eyes locked on the horizon where the largest threat yet awaited. The Dominion flagship, a colossal dreadnought, 3 kilometers long, armed with weapons capable of annihilating entire fleets. The sight of it made even the hardened crew gasp for a moment. The dreadnought's weapons glowed ominously, ready to unleash death in waves no human ship could survive. Every instinct screamed to retreat, Yet Rourke knew there was no time for fear. The convoy's safety depended on him. Every second they hesitated would cost thousands of innocent lives. "Brace yourselves," he said quietly, but with steel in his voice. "This ends here, or it ends with us." The Dominion flagship opened fire, plasma bolts tearing through the darkness, lighting up the void like a second sun. The Aegis shuddered as the first volleys hit. Hull breaches screamed across the ship, alarms blaring in every compartment. Yet the humans did not stop. They adapted, rerouted power, and pushed engines past safe limits, maneuvering with impossible agility. Every move was precise, every shot deliberate. Gunner Lara Tay's hands were blistered and trembling, but her focus was unwavering. "Aim for the weapons arrays," she shouted. "Keep them from firing on the convoy." Missiles streaked toward the massive dreadnought, striking its armor with explosions that rocked the ship. For a moment, the impossible seemed possible. The dreadnought staggered, its shields flickering under the relentless assault of a single, human frigate. Below deck, Chief Engineer Marcus Holt barked orders, his voice hoarse from exhaustion. "Divert all remaining power to the forward cannons. Patch the main hull. We're not done yet." Sparks flew, welders hissed, and crew members moved with a synchronized rhythm born of desperation and courage. Every second counted. Every action could mean life or death. Captain Rourke's mind raced. They could not win by conventional means. The Aegis was too small, too fragile. The dreadnought would crush them eventually. But humans had a way of turning the impossible into strategy. He scanned the ship's systems and made a decision. One final strike, one last gamble. "Prepare the reactor," he commanded. "We're going in hot." The crew knew instantly what he meant. Overload the reactor, use every ounce of energy to create a devastating impact. It was a suicide run, but it was their only chance to save the convoy. Silence fell for a heartbeat. Then determination surged through every human on board. They would give everything, even their lives, to protect the innocent. The Aegis charged straight at the colossal dreadnought. Weapon systems fired continuously. Engines burned beyond limits, and the hull shuddered under the strain. The Dominion flagship fired every weapon it had, but the humans refused to stop, weaving through the storm of destruction. Then, at the final moment, the Aegis detonated its overloaded reactor. A blinding explosion engulfed both ships, sending shockwaves across the battlefield. The dreadnought tore apart in fire and debris, ripping a massive hole in the Dominion formation. Destroyers and cruisers faltered, confused and damaged by the sudden chaos. From the wreckage, small fires burned, but the convoy had escaped. The Aegis was gone, reduced to nothing but fragments scattered across the void. Yet the impact of one human ship against the mightiest of fleets had changed the battle, giving hope where none had existed for years. Captain Rourke's voice echoed in memory through the ship's comms. "We fight for every life. We fight because we must. And even if we fall, the fire of humanity will never die." The galaxy watched in stunned silence. The Dominion Armada had lost their flagship, their confidence shaken and their strategy thrown into chaos. And across the stars, the legend of one small human ship, standing against all odds, began to spread. The void was quiet now, but it was a heavy, trembling quiet. The Aegis was gone, shattered into fragments that drifted silently among the stars. Yet the small human ship's sacrifice had left a mark no one could erase. The Dominion Armada, once unstoppable, faltered, their formation broken, their strategy in ruins. For the first time in years, fear entered their ranks, not of death, but of humans. Across the galaxy, survivors began to speak. They spoke of a tiny ship that had stood alone against a fleet of thousands. They spoke of human courage that defied reason, that refused to bow even when all hope seemed lost. Refugees whispered tales of the crew who fought with everything they had, of their captain who refused to surrender, and of the determination that saved countless lives. These stories spread from world to world, from system to system, growing into legend. The Galactic Council, which had watched helplessly as fleets After fleets fell, now understood something vital. They had counted humans out, underestimated them, and nearly lost everything because of it. But one small ship, one determined crew, had reminded the galaxy of a truth that no empire could destroy. Humans never give up. Humans fight, even when the odds are impossible. Humans protect life even when death is certain. Captain Elias Rourke's name became a symbol, not because he survived, he did not, but because he led with unwavering courage. The crew of the Aegis became heroes in memory. Every human who had served aboard remembered as warriors who stood against impossible odds. Children across the galaxy learned their story. Soldiers whispered it as inspiration before battle. Entire species, long beaten down by fear, lifted their heads and began to hope again. In the Dominion fleet, commanders shook with disbelief. Their arrogance had been shattered. They realized that victory was never certain, that strength alone could not conquer all. One human ship, fragile and alone, had struck fear into the heart of an empire. That realization would haunt them for years, a constant reminder that humans were more than they seemed, resilient, unpredictable, and unstoppable in their will. Back in the convoy, survivors slowly emerged from hiding, stepping into a universe that seemed less dark, less hopeless. For every human lost, countless others lived. Children played among the wreckage of once feared ships. Families reunited. Traders, explorers, and diplomats began to rebuild, inspired by the courage of one small crew. The galaxy had learned a new lesson. Even in despair, hope could bloom, and even the smallest spark could ignite change. And somewhere among the stars, fragments of the Aegis drifted silently, a monument to human courage. They were pieces of a ship, but they were also pieces of something larger, a symbol of the human spirit. They reminded every species that life, hope, and determination were worth fighting for, even when the end seemed certain. The Dominion Armada retreated. They still held power, but their certainty had been broken. Other species began to rise again, forming alliances, rebuilding fleets, and remembering that the impossible could be challenged. Humanity had returned to the galaxy not with conquest, but with courage. They had reminded everyone of a fundamental truth. You can break fleets, you can crush civilizations, but you can never break the human will to fight. Legends of the Aegis and its crew spread like wildfire. Every system knew the story. Every corner of the galaxy learned that when humans stood, even one small ship could change everything. And though Captain Rourke and his crew were gone, their spirit lived on. In every human heart, in every life they saved, and in the hope they ignited, the Aegis sailed forever. It was proof that courage mattered more than numbers, that hope mattered more than fear, and that humans would always stand when no one else could. The galaxy would never forget. One human ship had faced all odds. One human crew had stood alone. And in their sacrifice, the legend of humanity was born.